As we head into the back half of the year, or back, few weeks of the year, the bears are out in full force right now. Shit is getting a little strange in the markets. We're going to get into all of that today. Before we get going, like today's stream, subscribe to our channel. Nothing we say is financial advice. Please do your own research when it comes to any buying and selling decisions. Kevin, we saw a pretty gnarly sell-off on Friday. Every crypto took a pretty big dump down. Where do you think the market's going to be heading this week and going into the final 2 weeks of 2022?
Yeah, we saw some negative price action. Again, we'd kind of been expecting it. I think a lot of what we're looking at for the next 2 weeks might be slow. Usually this is like the slowest time of the year for trading, at least in traditional markets. I remember crypto last year was pretty sideways, not too many volumes coming in. So I'd anticipate it to slow down a little bit, maybe see a little bit of a bounce, but nothing too drastic, too crazy. But that could change. You said that there's a lot of data coming out this week.
There is, yeah. If we look at some of the economic reports this week, we have something almost every day. Tuesday, we have some housing data with permits and housing starts. Wednesday, we have some data around consumer confidence and existing home sales. So a lot of housing data early in the week. And then as we move into Thursday and Friday, we see some job data coming out. We're going to see some GDP from third quarter, the revisions there. And then Friday, we have PCE index. So the Fed's preferred inflation data. We're going to find that out on Friday heading into the holiday weekend. And we'll also see a little bit of data around consumer spending as well. So I think the jobless data on Thursday could be a big impact. I've seen a lot of headlines lately around big layoffs, especially in tech. We've seen Facebook lay off of 12% of their workforce. Google, Amazon have had some big layoffs. So I wouldn't be shocked if we start to see those numbers trend up, which we know how the markets have been these days. If we see those numbers going up, the market's going to respond positively because that's going to tell them that maybe Powell and the Fed will start slowing rate hikes and eventually pivot. So, what's bad for the people there tends to be good for the markets, which is unfortunate, but that's just kind of the situation we're in. Now, we have a little bit of earnings data this week from Nike, General Mills, FedEx, Oracle, a few big companies that report late. Their Q3 numbers very late in the year. So a little bit of interesting data heading into this last 2 weeks, which, like we said, it's usually kind of a sideways movement with the holiday coming up. But the way that, Christmas Eve, Christmas is on the weekend, we've got a full week of the markets being open. I'm not sure if the stock market closes early on Friday or what, but we got, a lot of time to still see more red if that's the direction things are going to be heading.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the macro remains bearish. Nothing's changed there, but I just expect this to be very boring into 2023 where it'll get very exciting.
Yeah, let's get into some of the charts. I know you and I were discussing before we started. I brought up the VIX, the volatility index. If you want to pull that up real quick, because I think that's showing an interesting pattern that could lead into, a continued bearish sentiment going into the new year.
Yep, let me just pull this up. There we go. All right, sweet.
So, you and I were talking at the beginning, and I mentioned that, most bear markets in the past haven't ended with a VIX under 40, without the VIX hitting 42 at some point. And if we look year to date, we can see that the peak was at like 38.5. And then, this is a very obvious pattern right here where we've spiked up, we've started to come back down, and now we're on the way back up. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this is the final time where it does hit that 42 number. I have no idea how often it's going to be able to. I mean, look at that. So how far back does that data go? Is that
this data? Let's see. Let's go year to year. So 1991.
Okay.
So it's there's definitely a pattern we can see. It just fluctuates up here. This is some outlier stuff. This looks like maybe COVID crash and stuff like that. But
that's that's probably where it's hit that peak 42 number. Like I'm sure. Well, COVID crash. If you look back further, is that like 2008, 2009?
2008, 2009. Say 2000.
Look at that.
2000 or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Right there. Yeah. So it's definitely fluctuated considerably in years of recessions and bad economic outlooks.
Yeah, and I don't think that the VIX is the end all be all by any means, but it has shown a very obvious pattern over the last multiple decades that lead me to believe that we need to keep an eye out. It'll probably just be a quick wick up to that point, and we'll see a crash, like a flash crash in the market maybe.
Yeah.
but I'm not expecting it to remain in the low 20s for the foreseeable future. Like it's going to have to go back up again and probably hit a new high for this cycle.
Yeah, it's been kind of boring, the VIX. It's been down in the low 20s, like you said. The stochastic RSI on the weekly looks like there's plenty of room to the upside, so there's definitely room for progression. How strong that move will be, we'll probably find out in the coming weeks to months. Let's take a look at the monthly as well. Monthly looks like it's coming down, but again, that could just come down fast over this month, next month, and then we have still 2 to 3 to 4, however many months of bear market left. And that could be enough fuel to push us closer to that level of 42, or even at least close to that area, like you said, a wick, close maybe below it. But yeah, I definitely think that this thing is going to be going up in the coming months. But like you and me spoke about, that could be coinciding with the potential stock market getting hit pretty hard in Q1.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move into the DXY now, and then we'll get into the cryptos that we're always talking about. So
Sweet.
give me the rundown on the DXY right now.
All right, let's just go to the monthly real quick. So the monthly looks like it's definitely coming down, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to go down all the way just because it's making this progression. As you can see, it can come down a little bit and shoot back up. I think that this could be just something telling us that in the future, we're going to be bottoming out at some point. That could potentially be next 4 or 5 months, like I said. But for right now, let's go to the daily. And we are seeing that the daily stochastic RSI is showing that this is getting close to overvalued. And we bounced off this last week. This was our support at 103.7. And if we lost this, we would have had to find lower support lower, but we stayed in this trend. We're hopefully trying to break above this middle trend line here, the support that we have at 104.6. If we can hold above that, we can try and get above the 105.6 as well. This would be a really, not necessarily bullish, but it would definitely give me some good expectations towards what will happen to risk assets if we can get above this. Again, I don't know how strong the dollar will be going into the 2023. I mean, it can be strong the entire year, but for the short term, I would just like to see us close above the support line, test this one, break it, and back test support, maybe even trade like sideways on it for a while. But yeah, I'm not getting too crazy where I think it's going to go up to 122 like I mentioned last week. I think that we're just going to have to see how much the dollar affects risk assets. Risk assets are down currently, and if the stock market goes down, the DXY naturally will go up. It's just the way it is. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now going into the end of the year and into 2023 for the dollar.
Yeah, I think if we see any movement before the end of the year, it'll be Thursday and Friday, like any significant movement on that, just with the data we have coming out during those days. So interested to keep an eye out there. We'll talk again on Thursday, see if the jobs and GDP data impact that at all heading into the weekend. Let's get into crypto now. So let's jump into the BTC chart.
Absolutely. So the big one that we saw was this huge parallel channel that we were trading in. We finally broke out of it. So before we broke to the downside, we tested above it. A lot of people got trapped up here, shot right back down. So we're out of that channel. But the way we formed after what we're forming on the lower time frame, so the 1 hour, the 4 hour, we were forming this kind of bullish, this bear flag. We broke out of it. I would anticipate us to test back into it, but it's more of a continuation pattern. So we're just continuing the trend that we just broke out of. It's nothing super bullish to me. I'm seeing a lot of this on a lot of coins. That's probably why we haven't seen that great of a bounce yet. So looking at this and then the stochastic RSI, we can see that on the 4 hourly, we're pretty overbought, and we didn't even get to the top part of that trend line up there. So I would anticipate that we'd probably break down just a little bit more for Bitcoin. To what level? Maybe 16.5. That'd be right around here. So maybe the bottom of this wick down that we saw on the 17th of December 22nd. No, December 16th. So Friday. Maybe test down here.
December 22nd hasn't happened yet, dude.
Yeah, I was about to say. It's these charts sometimes. I don't know. I'm just dumb. So right here, yeah, I would anticipate us to test off this, and we can see that there is actually support over here as well from the 29th of November. So maybe wicking down here, liquidating people who are going long before we start seeing shorts build below, and then we just go up to retest. we didn't make a huge move for this. Even though we dropped out of this channel, I would anticipate that we would have made a little bit more progression to the downside from breaking from the channel. We saw that most of the move was within the channel from 18.3 down to, what is that, 16.5. So I anticipate us that we're going to have to retest this trend line one more time. That could be our bounce after we've seen this move, but I don't anticipate us entering back into this. I think we'd find some pretty strong rejection at that level. And again, just want to show two things. Keep this in mind. Where are we? This is the 4-hourly. We need to go to the weekly. The weekly 250 EMA, they are getting closer. Again, the longer we stay down price, those two are going to eventually meet up. Once we do see those two cross, a lot of people usually tend to panic. That's a death cross. It's not necessarily good. And we'll probably see a pretty good sell-off, I would anticipate. The other thing that I've been keeping an eye on is this descending wedge, this falling wedge pattern. Again, these tend to be bullish, but this is a macro wedge, so this is clearly got to play out over the next coming weeks, months. But where it ends would be around May 15th, so it's another date I'm keeping in mind. Hopefully, everything works out the way that the charts are showing, and we do see some reversal by that time. But for the most part, till then, I'm not bullish in any way.
Okay. Yeah, it's still not looking super great out there. Let's move over to ETH now and kind of get into that. We saw, like with everything else, a pretty decent drop, early in the morning on Friday, and it just kind of hovered in that area. It got down into the 1170 range. We've bounced a little bit off of that, but still trading lower than we were middle of last week before we got the hawkish sentiment from Powell.
Definitely. So what we saw with here was we were trading in that channel. We found resistance up at that 1340, 1338 level. And see, we tested it, wicked off, and then we tested again, rejected, came down. And there's that wick that you're talking about that we saw on Friday. Pretty nasty. This is actually a pretty good move in my opinion. But what we fell right back into is another parallel, bear flag. So lower time frame, I'm looking at this again, just trading within it. Completely overbought on the 4-hourly. Let's go to the 2-hourly, see how that's progressing. 2-hourly is overbought. Let's go to the 1-hourly. My bad, that's the daily. 1-hourly, making its way towards overbought again. So this seems like for the price, for the amount of fluctuation we're seeing on the stochastic RSI and the very little price range that we're trading in, this again very much tells me this is a continuation pattern, and this is going to break at some point. I think this is more going to break to the downside. To what level? Maybe between 40 and 50, 1140, 1150. But this isn't necessarily the most bullish setup for the short term. But I do think that we are going to try and retest some level at some point. Do I think it's going to be the 1338 level? I don't know if there's enough, buying power at this point for us to get there. But I think we might get rejected on either one of these moving averages on the larger time frames. So maybe the 50 or the, the 100 EMA, something around here, 1240, 1228. Again, it really depends. 4-hour looks like it needs to come down more. So we'll have to just see how that plays out, and then we can start assessing maybe the potential moves to the upside for a bounce.
For sure. So probably not the best idea to tell your family to buy ETH at Christmas this year, huh? Maybe you want to hold off on that for another year.
Yeah, if you want to be a genius, just don't talk about crypto at all around your family. There you go. And then just roll up next Christmas, rich as can be. Buy a new family.
Maybe you set a few buy orders like at lower levels for them and just don't tell them about it. And then next year you just roll into Christmas and you made them all this money. That'd be cool.
If you like them. Yeah, definitely good idea.
If you like them. That's a big if right there. Okay. Anything else with ETH before we head into Matic, Link, Cardano, all that good stuff?
Now let's get into it. Again, most of these are just trading in very similar patterns right now. So
yeah,
nothing crazy, no big crazy news, but it just lets me know that the macro remains bearish and nothing has changed. So if we look at Matic, the target that I had put out was this 76 cent. We didn't reach it. We're about 2 cents short north of that. So we closed at like 78 cents. However, we are trading in a similar channel. We see that we are breaking out of it on the 4-hourly. So I do anticipate some type of negative price action. Could it be enough to test the 76 level? I think it's possible. So I'm just going to, keep my eyes on that. But I do expect us to bounce at some point, as we can see the daily is pretty oversold right at this point. Again, I don't think many of these altcoins are going to try and retest these levels up here. If they do, that's going to take a lot of buying pressure. Or people could just, yeah, I guess, move their supply off the exchanges, and there's like 2 Matic coins on there, so the price easily goes up. But for right now, I don't anticipate that being the case. Let's see, the weekly for Matic tells a different story. We're still midway through this stochastic RSI, which tells me that the momentum to the downside isn't over yet. Can it go back to the upside? Absolutely. But I think that there is still some macro negative price action that's coming for Matic in the coming weeks, whether that's beyond the 76-cent level, it could be the 64-cent level, or, we could see just some nasty capitulation that can bring us down to 40 cents. But this is more macro, I would say, like few weeks, months out, whereas this would be maybe in the next month or two or something like that.
Okay. Good deal there. Still, nothing has changed for me on the Matic front. I'm still very excited long term for that. So to get through, this sideways and downward period.
Definitely. It'll be interesting to see where it lands before it makes a really good bounce. But for right now, I think it's just fallen. Let's see. Now we're at Link. All right, Link's coming down on the weekly stochastic RSI. So they're very similar to Matic. They're trading pretty similar. They broke out of similar channels, but Link looks like it's making its way to the downside. If we look at the daily, we are pretty.
Where did Link close last week? Did they close under 6?
Let's see. We closed at 594.
Okay, so just under 6.
Yeah, there was let's see. Oh, my bad. I was looking at the wrong week. Yeah, 594. That was so it was under 6. Again, the weekly looks like there's plenty of progression to the downside, which tells me that we are probably going to break through some of these support levels. Short term tells me that as well. I think that we're going to have to test the 553. But if this weekly, comes down a decent amount, or even the short term, so let's go to the 4-hourly. 4-hourly, it's trading sideways, which is a continuation pattern, which tells me it's going to go down. The stochastic RSI is pretty overbought right now. I would anticipate at least 569 gets tested, maybe 553. But if this ends up being a bigger move than I expect, 530 is on the table. Whether we hold that or not tells me if we're going to go sub 5 or not. I would love to see it go under 530 just because, cheap Link. I think it's going to do extremely well. But for right now, lower time frames are not telling me that this is necessarily a bullish move. If we do see any type of bounce, I would, from current levels or even down here, I'd anticipate it to go to like 650-ish, right around here. I don't anticipate it testing that trend line once again. Again, I just don't think there's enough strength in the markets right now.
Do you have any buy orders in place for Link right now, like down in the 530 range or below 5?
Not much lower. So okay. I would say I'm more close to this range down here, 382 to 291.
Okay.
So considerably cheaper, but I'm also playing it pretty risky going that low. Yeah. But I definitely think it's still possible because that's only what? Now I got to pull up the ruler. Let's go here.
Here we go.
Current levels to the red line is only a 24% move. To the yellow line, it's only a 36% move. And to the purple line, it's only a 51% move. So still within the 40 to 60 range that I'm anticipating. But again, we made negative 18% in 2 weeks from the 1st to the 15th. So when it moves, it moves. It's just going to be what's going to be the catalyst, or are we going to be able to shake out retail investors so that institutional money can buy their tokens fairly cheap, which I choose to buy at that level too.
I'm curious how many retail are still, holding Link. I mean, I'm retail and I am, but outside, I think a lot of people have already gotten shaken out, but I'm sure there's always more room to the downside. So let's get into Cardano.
Yeah, this one's really interesting.
Did we see it break below 30, like on the weekly close?
Yes, by a good amount. So I was anticipating it to hit that 28 cents, and we did hit it, but we also went right through it. So we hit last week. The low was, let's see, that's 25.90. So we were at 25 cent Cardano, which is insane considering, this is probably one of the strongest assets. So a lot of people love this coin. I personally do, but this is insane that it just shot right through. And it's also trading sideways again. We can see on the 4-hour stochastic that it looks like there is a little bit more room to the downside. I'm tracking that we're probably going to test into this level down here between 23 cents and I think the top level was 25.6. So 25 cents, 25 and a half cents around there.
Kevin, if you like Cardano at a quarter, you're going to love it at a dime. Okay.
Honestly, I mean, I'd like to make my money work as least as hard as possible. So if it's a dime, I will be buying. But my orders are a little bit higher than that, just because I understand that, you know, I'm not trying to get wrecked. I'd rather have Cardano than not have it. But right now, I don't want it. But I definitely think we're going to test this area in here, somewhere in this this highlighted blue area, where we bounce to. Again, I think it might be this 28-cent level, maybe 29 cents at the most. I don't think we're going to go into this trend line. But let's see the weekly. Weekly is pretty oversold. My main thing for these is if we are seeing low volume and the price is moving very little, but the stochastic RSIs are moving, it tells me that there's not a lot of strength behind people buying at the current levels. So that's usually a good indicator that we are going to see a sell-off at some point. So that's one thing I'm just going to be watching over the next few weeks for Cardano and some other altcoins, because the second you see the stochastic RSI shoot up off of low volume, that just tells me that, you know, we're brace for impact.
Okay. Brace for impact, he says. I know you want to also touch on Binance, and there was some news this morning around Binance and Voyager. Do you want to get into that before we look at the chart?
Yeah, so I didn't really go too much into it. I just saw that Binance had acquired the Voyager's assets. And the last person that tried to acquire Voyager's assets was Sam Bankman-Fried, and that was a few months back. So a lot of people are obviously bringing up the similarities between the two. However, Voyager never went to FTX. They just never had the funds to actually, you know, acquire those assets. But it looks like Binance acquired those assets, so they definitely have money on hand. I think
they acquired it for about 1.2 billion is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, that seems like chump change for Binance. I think they have a ton of money, but is it the smartest move? I don't know. I really don't care, kind of, to be honest. I think it's definitely bullish for BNB because we were seeing that coin go straight down, but hopefully it gives people some form of reassurance that, you know, Binance is currently they're, you know, being a good player in the space. I don't think they're leveraging themselves to bad companies and stuff like that, or being leveraged. I think it's just good news going into the end of the year. Someone was going to acquire those assets, but yeah, so hopefully it's good for the space, good for BNB, but let's look at the charts to see if that tells us anything different. So if we go to the 4-hourly, we see not really that much of a pump. So it didn't excite too many people. I see that we're going up this way, which is very similar to a parallel channel. The stochastic RSI in the 4-hourly is getting pretty overbought. It looks like we're going to be making our way to the downside. I was charting to see if we retested this purple line right here, the $258 before we started making our way further down. We saw on, what was it, Saturday? We got not rejected, but we found support at 219. So it looks like there was a lot of buy orders right here that came in and bounce up. I anticipate us to get rejected from this. I don't know if we'll reach it or not. We might just go straight down from here. But I do anticipate us to come down, either retest that 220 level. If it's really bad, you know, this next move, we could possibly hit 207. But I do think that we might see a bit of a reversal coming. I see on the weekly, we still have some more room to the downside. So that kind of tells me that we're probably going to test this 207 level. But I do anticipate us to find some type of bounce in the coming weeks. Can't go down forever. Obviously, people are going to trade the ranges. And with this one being highly leveraged, people are, you know, trying to short the heck out of BNB right now. I wouldn't be surprised by tons of liquidations for this coin.
You think we could see like a short squeeze, send it back up to a decent number?
Let's see.
Potentially.
I'm gonna look at CoinGlass real quick. So get off here. We're gonna go to CoinGlass, and we're gonna take a look at what the funding rates look like for BNB. So BNB is extremely negative. Negative is always a good thing when it comes to funding rates. It means that a lot of people are going short, and that tells me that we're gonna potentially see a bit of a pump. Again, this is on the daily, or the current rates as they sit right now, we see that, Bitcoin is positive. It's getting close to neutral. So that's not necessarily something that we'd like to see if we want to see a short squeeze. But Binance coin right now is sitting pretty green and negative across the board. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a bit of a short squeeze in that scenario.
Look at that. I'm learning
Pretty
some
good
stuff, Kevin.
Yeah, but let's see if we do see a short squeeze. I'll be honest, it's probably going to be to that 258 level. So nothing crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hit that and then get rejected.
Well, shit. Okay.
Hey,
all right.
$10.
Anything? Hey, $10 matters, man. That's like a 4% move from where we're at right now. So,
Exactly.
We'll take it. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it for the day?
No, but one thing I guess I had something then. I think a lot of retail is currently buying, and I don't think they've been shaken out yet. That's the one thing that's kind of worrying me. Basically, off these pumps, they're not going up much more. We want to see institutional money come into the space. We're not seeing that, which tells me that we still have tons of time in this bear market. Once we start seeing like significant like changes of good amount of volume, I'll definitely feel a little bit more bullish. But for right now, I think that retail is still holding on because it's so cheap. But I think it's going to go a lot cheaper.
Okay. Once again, not financial advice, just one really smart guy's opinion on the matter. So there we go. So I think that will wrap it for today. Thanks everybody for watching. Once again, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. We'll be back on Thursday afternoon to see how the week has been going heading into Christmas. So appreciate everyone who tuned in. For Kevin, I'm Jeremy. We will see you next time, everybody. Have a great week.
See you Thursday, everyone.